Hello, today I'm talking to Peter Boon. Good evening, Peter. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself and about your books?
Hello, nice to meet you all, and thank you, Donna, for taking the time to have a chat with me. I'm really looking forward to it. So yeah, my name's Peter. I'm a brand new author in the last year. I published my first book, Who Killed Miss Finch, last August, and then the follow-up, The Snow Day Murders, came out at New Year. So yeah, I've been writing for, well, I've been published as an author for about 6 months now. I write traditional whodunit, cozy mysteries. They're a series set near where I live in Eastbourne, in a little fictional seaside village in between the cliffs near Beachy Head, and they follow the adventures of an amateur detective, Edward Crisp, who is a school librarian who is very shy and very anxious, doesn't have much of a social life, but has a bit of an obsession for traditional murder mysteries like Agatha Christie and Sherlock Holmes and so on. And he's a librarian at his school, and he has a teenage library assistant called Noah, who has autism, who is also really loves these kind of murder mysteries. So kind of two murder mystery fans who are kind of quite socially awkward, live a lot of their lives through the kind of the books that they like, and then find themselves in a real life murder mystery when the hated head teacher of their school, Miss Finch, is murdered, and they start to see parallels between real life and the tropes of the murder mysteries that they like to read, and they end up becoming embroiled in the investigation.
Awesome. Did you always want to write?
Yeah, so just before we started, I disclosed my age to Donna when we were chatting before we started. So for quite a few decades, I had my first little taste of writing success at the age of 14. It was a murder mystery, but it was in a different form. So I wrote a murder mystery play called Killer on the Costa, which was picked up and performed by a local theatre group in my hometown back in Wigan. And that, very much like my works now, was inspired by Agatha Christie and traditional murder mysteries because I got really into them at the time. Then I always kind of wanted to write. I've done bits and pieces of online journalism and script writing in between, but then life gets in the way and the decades disappear, and then before you know it, you get to the age of 40 and haven't kind of gone for that novelist career that you wanted. So in the last year or two, I kind of thought that's what I wanted to do. I got my first book written in the last lockdown last year, got it finished. That kind of inspired me to kind of have a go and kind of do what I could while the world stood still. Published it just, I thought, as a bit of a hobby, a bit of a sideline. Having said that, I did take it seriously with all the kind of marketing and advertising and everything. And I was pleasantly surprised that the first book, Who Killed Miss Finch, took off quite well. It's been in the young adult bestseller list. So it spent most of the year since it was released as the #1 young adult detective book. And my claim to fame in the first weeks of being released was knocking off the brand new Hunger Games book off #1 in the young adult mystery and thrillers, which I was really pleased about. I should clarify, mentioning young adult, that my books they're family friendly. They are adults, also aimed at young adults, because I saw like a bit of a gap in the market that no one really seems to do that. As I said, I'm inspired by Agatha Christie, and when you read kind of lots of comments from other writers who are inspired by Agatha Christie, or when you read about Agatha Christie fans, lots of people picked her up as a child or as a teenager, much like I did. So I wanted to kind of create these kind of family-friendly mysteries that appeal to both kind of parents and their children. And I'm a teacher as well, so I wanted to kind of write something that young people would enjoy, but also for adults as well. So I've tried to create that with my Edward Crisp mysteries, which is why I market them to both adults and young adults.
And do your students know that about your two books?
Yeah, so I've just changed jobs actually, because I was talking about my kind of career a minute ago, and Who Killed Miss Finch I was pleasantly surprised at how successful it was. that enabled me to go part-time. So I've just gone to a new college in Brighton, teaching a couple of days a week. But before that, I was full-time in a lovely special educational needs school. It's near where we live, Seaford, just near Eastbourne. But it's a residential school for boys from London. And yeah, I've just left there because I couldn't get part-time work there. It's full-time only. But yeah, it was great, and they loved the book, and I couldn't believe it at first. So I was still working there when I had Miss Finch out, and I just left at Christmas. And then my second book, which I mentioned, Snow Day Murders, you probably won't be able to see it on camera, but I actually dedicated my second book to the boys of the school I've just left, the special educational needs school. So the dedication in my second book is for the boys at Bowden House School: go forward and achieve your dreams. And as soon as I'm able to, once school's open, I'm going to go in and do like a little personal book launch for them. So yeah, because I'm an English teacher, I think English and maths compared to a lot of other subjects, it's hard to relate to real life, and a lot of students think of it as something they kind of have to do, whereas a lot of the other subjects, like science or sports or whatever, people can relate to kind of certain careers. And I think it's good as an English teacher to have something tangible to show them, to say, well, this is what you could do. You could go and write your own book and become an author.
Apart from Agatha Christie, were there any other authors that inspired you growing up or that inspire you now?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I started off even further back with the mysteries of Enid Blyton, famous 5 and Secret 7. And then I did English Lit at uni and at college, so A-level and a degree. So lots of the classics, lots of the 19th century stuff like Thomas Hardy and Charles Dickens. Otherwise, before I wrote Who Killed Miss Finch, I kind of spent a good couple of years reading around crime fiction. And I love lots of the crime fiction novels that are a bit like my novels, kind of have a look at the traditional whodunit and how you can kind of subvert those tropes a bit. So the Anthony Horowitz books, 7 Deaths to Beeble in Hardcastle I enjoyed, Lucy Foley, lots of those, lots of other writers that are, like I'm trying to do, bring the traditional whodunit back.
Do you get a chance to read much?
I try to read as much as I can. I read advanced review copies for a few other writer friends when I can, but I think like most readers and writers, and like most people in the crime groups, like yours that you see on Facebook, book groups on Facebook, I've got a massive long to be read pile that just only ever seems to grow. But I try and read as much as I can. Usually I'll probably have like a spurt where I'll read kind of 3 or 4 books in a couple of week period, and then I'll kind of really focus on writing and then kind of try and read a bit more. I try and read kind of things that are similar to my genre, but also just great examples of writing and great examples of characterization. I like to read as widely as possible. But when you're in such great groups like yours, I always see people complain, kind of saying that there's more books than you would ever have time to read. Like you were saying before we started this interview, you just can't get time to read them all. And it's the 1st of the month today, isn't it? What I always do at every 1st of the month is go onto Kindle store and buy probably about 10 or 15 books that are in the 99p monthly deals, and you just never get time to read them all. But I read as much as I can, and I think any writer should kind of continue to read as much as they can to kind of just kind of absorb it and just to inform your own writing.
Yeah, I think I'd like to find the key to eternal life just so that I can eventually get to the end of my TBR.
I don't think any of us who are kind of reading enthusiasts will ever get to the end of our TBR.
No, it just keeps growing. As you're quite a new author, are you friends with lots of other authors?
Quite a few. I've made what I've been pleased about in the last year is kind of the people I have met through doing this. So I've met quite a few other authors, and I've also met people on Facebook groups and Bookstagrammers. yeah, I've met a few other authors online that I've become good friends with. So Benedict Brown, who writes the Izzy Palmer series, mystery series, is a good friend of mine. He edited my first book actually, and his wife is my cover designer. So that's been really good. Victoria Dowd, Smart Woman's Guide to Murder. She's become a good online friend of mine. Mary Chong, who does the Murder and Malpractice series. So again, I kind of seem to socialize online with writers who write in a similar field to me. And I think it's good to kind of share ideas and as indie authors, like, support each other.
Yeah, it seems a really supportive group anyway of all the authors. So it's quite nice. Yeah,
and I'm in quite a few author Facebook groups as well, where if you do anything you're not sure of, you can ask a question. There's always lots of help. So I have found the kind of author community really supportive.
What's your writing day look like?
Well, as I mentioned, that I've gone part-time at work, but I still work 2.5 days a week, Thursdays and Fridays teaching, and then half a day on a Wednesday planning. Other than that, I try and write kind of on and off throughout the day. One of my favorite things I've discovered since writing is the Microsoft Word app on my phone and how it's synced to your laptop. So I might do a couple of hours on my laptop, kind of sat down, kind of seriously writing, like giving it my all. But then as I'm kind of sat watching TV or getting a drink, I can read through what I've done on my phone and kind of do any quick edits, and then it syncs up to the main document. So my writing day kind of is split between sat at my laptop at my work desk where I'm talking to you now, but also being able to kind of update a couple of paragraphs or do a bit of proofreading from my phone. And I think that's really good. And then I do all my social media and Facebook stuff and advertising from my phone as well. I think kind of smartphones and technology has been a real kind of blessing for authors, particularly. What's interesting is obviously I've launched as an author during the kind of lockdown era, and all the online stuff is even more valuable because we can't get out there and do things.
And when it's all over, are you going to go to the book festivals and things?
I'd like to, yeah. I'd like to. Again, as I said, a lot of those things were kind of before I became an author. It's all been online since. But I think I'd like to do stuff like that. I was lucky that my first book came out in August when the lockdown had eased a bit, and I managed to do a book launch at one of my local theatres in Eastbourne. Asked me to do my book launch there, so I did a little. It was like cabaret table style seating, and it was only kind of 50 people capacity, but I managed to do a little book launch there, which was really nice, and that was good. And then my second book obviously just came out last month, so I did that online. I just did a Facebook Live on my own page, but I was really pleased with that. Got over 2,000 views in the end, so I thought that was really good. And that's the benefit of online, isn't it? If you do something in person, you've got like a seating capacity, especially in this social distancing era. But online, you can reach as many people as you want to, can't you?
Yeah, it's amazing how many people you can actually get to if it gets shared around. Are you a plotter or a pantser?
The official answer is plotter. The probably truthful answer is somewhere in between. So I buy a new notebook for each book. I've got lots of kind of post-it notes of things on my wall. So what I do is I kind of plot out my outline. So I mentioned to you earlier that before I kind of launched as an author, I spent a couple of years kind of reading and researching, and I read quite a lot on story structure. And I kind of use I use 3-act structure, but I use story plot points where basically every quarter, so 25% into the book, 50% into the book, 75% into the book, you have like a big kind of plot point. So what I do is I plot out, when I start planning a new book, I'll plan out those plot points at quarter, halfway through, 3/4 of the way through on kind of big paper. And then I kind of bullet point in between when I have ideas and where they fit, and then basically that they will become chapters as I write. So I've usually got kind of a rough outline of where it's going, but obviously the beauty of that is you're not stuck to that, and quite often it changes, the things swap around and it's quite fluid. but I like to kind of know where I'm going. And all three of my mysteries that I've written so far, as I've come up with the idea, I know the solution and the murderer and how it's going to turn out before I start writing. I think when I get the idea comes in my head with the solution to it.
How do you choose your character names?
That's an interesting one. So I don't think I'm very good at choosing character names, and I've got a really good friend of mine who's not actually a writer or anything creative, but he's really good at coming up with names. So he named Miss Finch and also lots of my other characters, and he helps me do that. But what I've also kind of done with people's permission is, particularly with minor characters, I kind of borrow friends' first names as surnames as kind of little tribute, and then in kind of as I've kind of built a bit of a following, I've done that in a couple of cases with readers' names as well that have been particularly supportive, or reviewers. So when I brainstorm my names with my friend who helps me, we try to think of names that kind of fit the characters a little bit like. We were talking about writing inspirations before, but this has only just come to me. A little bit like I remember when I used to read Roald Dahl books when I was little. And Charles Dickens does this too, where instantly you kind of know the character by the name. And when I was just trying to come up with the name of Miss Finch, who's this obviously, her name's in the title, she's a horrible head teacher who gets murdered, really nasty woman who everyone hates, and I wanted a name that kind of fitted that. And me and my friend came up with Miss Finch, and I think it's like that. I try and come up with names that kind of suit the character a little bit as well.
Yeah. If you were transported into your books, would you get on with your main characters?
That's a really good question. It's funny because quite a few of my friends who read Miss Finch said to me, because quite often people think that you're writing as yourself or you put yourself in the main character. And lots of different people said to me that they could see parts of me in all the different characters in my book, which I thought was quite good. And it's perhaps true, I'm not sure.
What was I just going to ask you? I've totally forgotten now. Do you put any secret jokes or messages in your books that only a few people understand?
Not really. I mean, other than the last chapter I gave you probably ties into that a little bit with kind of using kind of friends' names for characters. So there was a minor character that was an extra in the first book that kind of increased his role in the second book, is a young local policeman, PC Wood. And I thought he wouldn't be anything more than an extra. He didn't speak in the first book. And that was kind of based on me and my partner's housemate's surname. And he was an extra, but I'd written in the first book that he lived in the little village. And obviously the CID that come to investigate from outside the little village. And my second book, The Snow Day Murders, the concept is the little village is completely snowed in and the police can't get in or out. And Edward Chris, the amateur detective, has to solve the crime with no one to help him. And I realised that the only person that would be able to help him would be the local constable that I'd already established lived in the village, who was an extra in the first book. So our housemate ended up being upgraded to a main part, which was quite pleased with.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, otherwise, other than kind of little tributes, character names, I wouldn't kind of really have inside jokes as such, because I wouldn't want to kind of alienate, because I'm kind of going for a wide audience. I wouldn't want to kind of alienate people. But I don't think there's any harm in kind of using character names as tributes to like friends or family and readers.
What's the most interesting thing you found out when doing research?
I'm trying to think. So I had to research quite a lot of poisons in my first book. And as I said, I've already mentioned Agatha Christie, but she's got a great poisons book. But I also, as you know, I'm a teacher, an English teacher. I spoke to a couple of my science teacher friends, because in the first book, without giving too many spoilers, the poison concerned is found within the school. So I was talking to my science teacher friends about what poisons would be in a school, and I found out that my colleague at the time, the science teacher I was working with, knew about 20 different ways to poison people without getting caught. So I thought, oh, I'll have to keep an eye on her.
Oh, that's brilliant. And also
Yeah,
quite
otherwise
terrifying.
I've just kind of it's been interesting to learn about the kind of structure of local police. As I mentioned to you kind of personally before we started the formal interview, because I'm a cozy crime writer, you don't really get into a lot of the police procedural. And I didn't, apart from poisons, I didn't have to research that much for my Who Killed Miss Finch book. But for the Snow Day murders, because the whole concept was they were trapped and the police, I was a bit inspired by the lockdown, but the police have to liaise with Edward through like technology like we are now, like video calls and Zooms and stuff. And they had to do the whole crime scene with Edward and the local constable kind of helping. So I had to research all the roles that would be involved in a crime scene, and then obviously link them back and have them liaising over Zoom and so on. So that was quite interesting to kind of see the structure of kind of who does what.
Yeah, it's more complicated than you think as well, isn't
Yeah,
it?
definitely. Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Would you consider writing in other genres?
Potentially. I mean, I've no plans to do anything other than kind of this cozy mystery series for the first couple of years. I do I mean, the mysteries are kind of quite light with quite quirky characters, and there's a couple of little kind of side romance plots as well. And one thing I think I could maybe kind of branch out quite easily into, and one thing that I've sometimes quite like reading as well, is kind of romantic comedies. And I don't think there's too many romantic comedies by male writers. And I think that in the same universe as Edward, or using kind of one of the supporting characters, I don't think it would be that much of a stretch to kind of branch out into writing kind of rom-coms. So that would be something. But there is kind of elements of that in the plots of my books anyway. But I think if I was to have a go at another genre, it would probably be rom-com.
Nice. Does your partner and your family read your books?
Yes. So my mum's always is always my very first reader after my editor, and she just proofreads for me. And yeah, it's been quite nice because I'm originally from up northwest of England in like Wigan near Manchester, and I lived there in Eastbourne now near where my books are set. So I live 300 miles away from my family, and it's kind of it's a nice way of kind of staying in touch with them. And every time like my brother and sister-in-law and mum and dad all read my books, they kind of mess me with the theories as they go along. So all that's really nice. And what I found as well has been really lovely. I've already talked about how nice it's been kind of connecting with authors and readers since I've published, but it's also been really nice connecting with people that I've kind of known from my past, not even people I've been close friends with, but old colleagues and old school friends who are into reading, who've seen like me kind of post out my books and have kind of read it and offered support, and that's been really nice as well.
Oh, that's really lovely. Do you get a lot of feedback and stuff from your readers? Do you hear a lot from them?
Yeah, because I'm quite active on my Facebook and Instagram, and if anyone ever posts on my Facebook or comments on one of my posts or one of my adverts to say they're reading, I always make a point of kind of interacting back and ask them to let me know how they enjoy it, to kind of keep up that dialogue. And then I get kind of lots of kind comments from that. And I just think, particularly obviously as I'm kind of starting out and I'm kind of building my readership, I don't think it's any hardship to kind of reply back to a reader. I think it's nice. It makes it more personal for them. And I've had a few people say, there's a couple of people on Instagram have contacted why they're reading, and they actually end up telling me their theories as they're reading. And 2 or 3 people have said to me, oh, it really kind of enhanced the experience, being able to like discuss it with the author as I went along. And I think as a reader myself, I would love to do something like that. And I think it just kind of makes the experience more personal. And I've kind of been quite lucky so far, touch wood, apart from 1 or 2 that I've had kind of really nice feedback in reviews and everything.
Yeah, I've been through my page, I've been trying to encourage people to get in contact with authors if they enjoy their books, because I think some people think they're going to be bothering them when generally that's not the case.
No, I know. A lady emailed me the other day telling me how much she enjoyed my first book, and I replied back and she said, oh my God, I can't believe you replied. made my day. But I was like, no, you made my day. It's so nice to kind of wake up an email about someone saying how much you enjoy your book. I mean, I think we were talking before about kind of our kind of reader communities and writers, but with both of those two, and kind of interacting with people who read your books, I think it's really important, because otherwise writing can be such a kind of solitary profession, can't it? And I think those kind of relationships and encouragement and feedback is all important. Otherwise, you're just sat there at a desk by yourself.
I think actually that's something that's come out of the lockdown. A positive thing is the more interaction between readers and writers, you know, because we've got nothing else to do. So we can actually go on Facebook and say, yeah, we loved it.
Yeah, I've noticed that. And I think I've been lucky with the time that I've launched that kind of more people are stuck at home and more people are taking up reading. Like I saw a report the other day that kind of reading figures are at an 8-year high, aren't they? And that's because of lockdown. So I think my kind of moderate success so far is a lot of that has been luck with the kind of time I've launched as well.
What's the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you?
Oh, wow.
I told you there'd be some tricksy questions.
You did. I feel like I'm in a job interview now. Let me think. being stuck on an online interview chat without an answer to the question.
I'm not letting you get away with that.
No, I didn't think you would somehow. Most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to me. If my partner or any of my friends were on the interview with me, they'd probably named about 20 already by now. Let me think. Most embarrassing thing. I'm trying to think if there's anything in my kind of writing career or just generally. Oh, I wish you'd prepared me for that. I wish you'd prepared me for that one.
The last guy I spoke to had to sort of weed out all the answers he couldn't give.
Oh, he just kind of filed them off and didn't answer them?
No, he did in the end. I can't remember what he told me now, but yeah. I said usually with the boys, it's always involving nakedness of some description.
Oh.
Which it is. I'm not, it just is.
I don't think I've got any naked embarrassing stories actually that I can think
of. I'll come back to you.
I'll have a think while you ask me the next question. I'll try and give you one an example by the
end. No worries. If you were to invite 4 famous people to a dinner party, who would you invite?
Dead or alive?
Yep, up to you.
They probably all, most of them probably be dead actually. I would go for probably people I've mentioned in this already. Agatha Christie, William Shakespeare, Charles Dickens, and my favourite singer, who is Beverly Knight. She might feel a bit out of place with all those writers, but never mind.
Yeah. You're the first person that said Shakespeare, actually. That's interesting.
Oh, it's because I'm an English teacher as well.
Yeah.
That's probably why.
Yeah, everyone else thinks Shakespeare, and oh no, not Shakespeare. If you were deserted on a desert island, what 3 things would you want with you?
My mobile phone, definitely. Yeah, let's go with mobile phone, supply of food, and my Kindle.
Awesome. What's your biggest fear, and would you write about it?
Biggest fear. That's a really good question. I'm not sure really. I have. We were talking before about kind of putting myself into all different characters, and I didn't base myself on my main character Edward as such, but he suffers from kind of some anxiety, and I've experienced that a little bit myself, and I've kind of put that into the character a little bit.
Yeah. How would your friends describe you?
Donna, these are proper job interview questions.
I know.
You'll have to tell me at the end if I get the position or not. They probably describe me as sometimes really annoying, but kind of really kind of kind and honest and supportive, and hopefully someone whose books they enjoy to read.
What's your biggest goal in your writing career?
I think it's just, and as I mentioned, I've been very lucky to kind of make a step towards it already. My goal is to kind of sustain it as my full-time career. Like, I love teaching. I've been teaching for about 13 years and I really enjoy it. But my goal is to be a full-time writer, not to kind of make millions, but to be able to live off it. And I'm really pleased that I've got my second book out, and I feel like I'm just teaching like 2.5 days a week now. So I feel like I'm kind of part way to doing that. But I think my goal is for it to be able to kind of sustain it as a long-term career, be able to live off it. And then I think with kind of career goals, they should kind of evolve and change in the every kind of few years. So I think in, let's say, 2 or 3 years time, if I'm doing that, then I would kind of move on to like a different goal and say, oh, I want to try and aim to get TV rights for my Boon Chris series or whatever. But I think for now, my goal is just to be able for it to become a full-time career as an author.
And then what's coming next for you?
Okay, great. So I've got actually, I've got my first 2 novels, but then actually later this week, I've got a brand new novella, The Mystery of Jackson King, which is about a quarter to a third of a novel, of my novel length, look at about 15,000 words. That's going to be, there's going to be a free copy of the ebook to anyone that would like to sign up to my mailing list. But then anyone that doesn't want to part with their email address, they'd be able to buy the ebook on Amazon. And also, I'm lucky that I've got a quite good following of readers who like my paperback, so I'm going to be releasing that on paperback as well. So as I say, that's about a third of a novel length. But then my next full Edward Chris mystery, Death in the Closet, is out in April. So I'm aiming to, as I mentioned, I obviously love writing the cozy mystery genre, but one of the benefits of that, without having lots of kind of procedural detail to research, I can kind of write them relatively quickly, especially now I'm kind of only teaching part-time. So I'm aiming to kind of every kind of 3 or so months release a new novel with a couple of these kind of short novellas in between. So as I mentioned, I think developing the Edward Chris series over the next year or 2 is my kind of medium-term aim for what's next in my writing.
Awesome. Well, I don't have any more questions unless you thought of your most embarrassing story yet.
No, I don't think I have. I might have to. When you post the interview, I'll have plenty of time to think that. I'll post it as a comment underneath.
I won't forget, just so you know.
Oh, I know. I can tell you all. I can tell you. I could turn the tables and ask you to tell me your most embarrassing moment in the meantime.
The thing is, I don't care. I have 2 that I can think of. The first one is sitting in A&E near Christmas, dressed as Mrs. Santa with one of my members of staff. So that was quite embarrassing. And then the second, I had one of those portable blender mixer things that you can take with a smoothie in, and it had fresh strawberries in, and I hadn't put it in the fridge. No. Yeah, I was at work and I went to mix it to mix it before I drank it, and it exploded all over the desk, over the work computer, over the phone, up the wall, all over me. It was pink. And so that was quite embarrassing. And I was only on my lunch break, so I had to go out of the office into the sort of where the ovens and stuff are. So I work for Greg's, and get like blue roll and stuff to try and clean it up.
Oh no!
And I think my boss just walked around and it's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." Oh. Covered in pink. I was like,
I'm glad you told me that story, because you made me think of what I've got now. So in my first year of teaching in a kind of school in Manchester, First lesson in the morning, just before I was about to start teaching. Flask full of coffee. I'd not put the lid on properly, and it went straight down me, and I had a plain white shirt. Luckily, a very kind teaching assistant popped out to buy me a shirt from George at local Asda or something. But I had to teach the first lesson or so until she came back in a white shirt just covered in coffee.
Was it hot as well?
Yeah. But I had no choice. It was either attempt to teach topless and get sacked, or wear the hot coffee stain shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, luckily one of my colleagues popped out and bought me a replacement, which was very kind of her.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I think the stains of my smoothie are still on the walls of the office.
Yeah, your story was one of those that as soon as you mentioned the blender, I think obviously you knew what the punchline was going to be.
Yeah, I think I've got a picture actually. I took a picture, so I'll send it.
Oh yeah, you have to.
Yeah, it was funny. But it's either laugh or cry, and I was just absolutely pissing myself. I just thought it was hilarious because only I could do that.
Yeah, I think kind of laughing and finding humour things is important, and I've had quite a few kind comments. I don't kind of imagine my books as being funny when I write them particularly, but a couple of the sporting characters made me. I've had lots of kind comments that people have kind of laughed away kind of some of my characters in my books and some of the one-liners, and I think kind of humour is quite important, and I think that's why I've chosen a relatively light genre, cozy mystery, because I hate when I watch films that don't have happy endings, or where the baddie gets away with it, or things like that. And I think kind of cozy mysteries, it's kind of mystery and solution, and everything's kind of quite neatly tied up, and I quite like that, I think.
Yeah, that's cool. I like humour as well. It makes it more memorable as well, I think.
Yeah.
Well, that really is all the questions then. So the last thing I will ask you is if you want to tell people where they can find out more about you and your books.
Okay, yeah, that'd be lovely. So I'm active on Facebook and Instagram. Both I have page on each of those that you would find me as Peter Boon author. And when you post this video on your group, I will put a link to that as well. I'm just with the help of my partner, just finishing off my website, which is due to go live. But otherwise, find me on my social media pages under Peter Boon author. And I've got a page on Amazon with all my books on there so far as well. So yeah, as I've mentioned in my interview with Donna, I love to hear from readers and love to chat with them. So I'm always happy to hear from people. Oh, and my email address as well is peter@peterboonauthor.com, which I think I was quite pleased when I set that up. I thought, oh, that was my favourite part, I think. My own email address and my own website name in it. So yeah, peter@peterboonauthor.com. And as I say, I always love to hear from people. So that'd be lovely.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, John. It's been really nice to chat with you, and it's nice to kind of hopefully connect with a few new readers as well. I love the work you do on your page, and as we discussed before, you branched out onto Instagram as well. So it's nice to see you on there as well. So just kind of thank you really for all the work you do for up and coming authors like myself. It's really appreciated, and it does really make a difference, I think.
Yep.